I was nervous and freaking out. We agreed to do her gravel driveway. At the time, it was the biggest job we'd ever done. I think it was like maybe $1,500, but I was freaking out because it was going to be a 1-day job. And I was like, I'm going to make $1,500 in 1 day. Now, granted, it's not all profit, but you're like, this is insane. We had completed that job. And from that moment on, I was like, this is it. I'm going all in on landscape installs. And I looked up where these HOA buildings are, like their headquarters that are owned by then the company that owns the HOA, drove down to their offices and asked them like, how do I submit this? What paperwork do you need? How do I get the paperwork? How do I get your rules? Just went all out on that. And that then took us to another level of doing full scale designs, front yard, backyards, learning HOA approvals, learning the minimums on HOAs.
Welcome back to the COS Business Podcast, #1 podcast in Colorado Springs.
Today, our highlighted sponsor is Pinnacle Advanced Primary Care. That's pinnacleapc.com to check them out.
Awesome. Well, today we have a very special guest, Justin Sturgill,
Yes. Thank
with
you.
Incline Landscaping. How you doing, man?
I'm doing good, man. How are you guys?
Pretty good.
We're doing good, man. We're doing
Nice.
really great. We're excited to dive into your business. We were talking a lot before the show
Yep.
today.
Yeah.
Let's just break it down. You are you originally from Colorado Springs? Let's start from the beginning.
Yeah.
Where you went to high school, and then we know very early on you started your entrepreneurship, like pretty much right out of high school, right?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So I was born and raised out here. Grew up with, I'm the youngest of 3 brothers. Went to Mark Twain and then Irving, and then really got into wrestling as I was younger and ended up going to Wasson for the wrestling team. It was really stacked. I'm old now. So this is back in like 07, 08, and then transferred to Coronado my last 2 years.
Coronado.
Yeah.
And so why did you transfer? Was it specifically for the wrestling program or?
Specifically for wrestling. Yeah. So like before my entrepreneurship, my whole life was wrestling. So like my whole come from a big wrestling family. When we were younger, we used to train at the Olympic Training Center.
Oh, that's awesome.
Went to like private camps there. Had like full rides for scholarships. When I was younger, I was a state and national champion. So like my whole life revolved around wrestling. And then when I got into high school, I got injured. So I had some shoulder surgeries. I've had 3 shoulder surgeries total, 2 on my left, 1 on my right. And long story short, the doctor basically was like, look, you're not going to be able to hold your kids up, like raise them up when you're older. You got to stop the sport. Didn't listen to him, obviously went back, I kept dislocating my shoulder, like completely blowing it out. The final time I did it, it got so bad where I got put back in place and I was sleeping. I used to sleep with my arms above my head and it was blowing out in the middle of the night. I had to go to the hospital to put it back in. And that's when I kind of realized like, okay, I can't do this sport forever. So I lost my scholarships, didn't go to college, got my surgeries. And that's kind of when I was like, what am I doing with my life? My entire life has been this sport. And that's when I kind of went on the whole entrepreneurship journey and got into that world.
Can we get that mic up a little closer too?
No, you're good. That's insane. First and foremost, I have 2 side questions, but the first one is, I know a certain Henry Cejudo went to Coronado High School and wrestling. And I mean, he was a big UFC double champ and gold medalist wrestler, right? Did you ever run into him?
Yeah. So we met him at high school, and then his nephew, Adrian Cordova, I grew up wrestling with him at Coronado as well. So really close with them. And then part of like the MMA world. So my brother went on and wrestled at UNC, and that's where he met Justin Gaethje. So like him and Justin Gaethje were really close, and they talk all the time, and they were roommates. And now that Justin Gaethje's blown up, if you know like UFC and MMA, Justin Gaethje's a pretty big name, and so we're kind of close in that world. My brother got really connected with a lot of the big MMA guys. Like back in the day, Greg Jackson brought his camp out there, and so like George St. Pierre, Nate Marquardt, all them flew in and wrestled. And so my brother, because of Justin Gaethje, is connected with a lot of the UFC guys.
Nice. Are you connected? Do you know Victory MMA and everything here?
Yeah.
Awesome. Sweet. Yeah, because we. Elijah's actually a good past guest on this show, and he just recently got in.
I seen his UFC debut. Yeah, I don't know those guys as well. Like I'm the older guy now, but when I was younger, like 10 years ago, when I was still doing wrestling, is when I would go and train with those guys a lot.
Oh, sweet. Yeah,
but
they've got a good setup. I mean, I don't know what they had 10 years ago, but they've got some pretty good now.
I'm sure it's way better now. Yeah,
it's so crazy, man. The springs and everything. Yeah, and like. Yeah, it's just grown so much, and like all the people you ran into, that's huge. Yeah. But like when your identity is like solely around your sport.
Right.
I played football growing up. That was a big part of wrestling was a big part of my brother's identity too in California. Cool. It's like everything to you. And when you lose that, you lose a little bit of your identity.
Definitely.
And so talk about that, like the transition from like, you thought it was going to be something in the, like you're on your way onto your mission. You had a scholarship, you lose that. And then entrepreneurship comes into play. Like, how did that come to be?
Yeah. So when I transferred to Coronado, I stayed pretty close with a lot of the Wasson, like my Wasson friends and family out there. And so I had a buddy who started a clothing line, and Wasson was kind of ghetto, let's call it what it is. And so like we weren't allowed to like wear hoods or headphones. And so for his senior prank, he made this shirt, and it was Wasson Correctional Facility, sold it to all the seniors, and it was a big joke. And he made a lot of money from when we were 17, like a couple $1,000. And so he was like, I'm going to start a clothing line. So when I lost my scholarships and was like, I don't know what I'm doing in my life, I knew that I was like, okay, let me take this energy. Obviously I was a top performing athlete. And so I had always knew how to be like disciplined and trained, but I didn't know what to do with that energy and focus. So he came to me and said, hey, I'm starting this clothing line. Do you want to help me? And I was like, sure. So a couple of our friends got together and started this clothing brand with him. And we started growing it. We got into a couple of the malls out here in the Springs. We ended up moving to Denver, got into all the malls, basically from Denver, ranging down to Pueblo. We were in pretty much every mall, every major mall in Colorado, and like the little kiosk there. And that led to me meeting a friend back from Wasson that knew a buddy that went to the University of Hawaii. Long story short, through a connection of a connection, we ended up meeting the founder of Zoomies. And he lived in Seattle at the time, and I had just moved to Seattle for my girlfriend at the time. And so we went and had a mentorship with him out there for about a year. And he kind of taught us the ropes to the game, and that helped us a little bit. And it never really went anywhere though. So it was just a lot of years of like struggling. We didn't really know anything about like trademarks or branding and all that type of stuff. We ended up getting in trouble and found out somebody in a different state had that same name, but they spelt it different. We had to start from scratch. This is 4 or 5 years in now.
Gosh.
And so we had to start a whole new brand, but
they sent a cease and desist or anything like that?
Pretty much, yeah. No, they never sent an official cease and desist. We were talking through social media at the time, and we were pretty cordial. And we had a business. There was 4 of us. We had a business member at that time leave for personal reasons, and so we were like, let's just start fresh. The 3 of us now. This is kind of we're in talks with this person, and let's let them keep their name.
Sure.
We'll start over fresh with a new one, and so we started with a new one, and then that journey led us to Los Angeles, and we ended up moving to California.
Wow. Yeah. So that was like the first phase, and then you're in California.
Yeah, kind of. Yeah. Like it was a lot of learning in that phase of the clothing industry. We ended up getting into a show called Agenda, which in the clothing world is like the largest streetwear show you can get into.
Wow.
That went really well for us. But then after that, things started to die down. And I think what we ended up learning was there was too many chiefs in the kitchen and not enough Indians. And there was too many alpha males that all wanted their own idea. And that's where I started to learn about choosing the right business partners and just learning more about business in general. And I think that's one of the main reasons that business probably never went anywhere, like major as well. So
yeah, that's a hard lesson to learn, especially when you get involved. And it sounds like you're involved with some good friends. I've had that many times over where I've gotten involved, and Andrew's witnessed a lot of that, like getting involved with really good friends and seeing what happens from there. Like and not only that, but some people are just not even meant to be an entrepreneur.
Yeah.
And like they have different, I guess, expectations of what it takes to reach another level of success. It's like
I totally
you have some moderate success, but also to like get to another extra level of success, maybe what you want or what you're aspiring to might be completely different from what they're looking at as well.
Yeah, I totally agree with that. And we were all best friends in high school. After the clothing line days, we went through a period where things were a little rough. We still remained friends, but then to this day, we're all still best friends. So that's like the one thing I'm really proud of is keeping those relationships. But definitely learned a lot of like what not to do is what I always say. And I think that's one of the reasons that the new venture I'm in has been successful for us.
We'd like to take a quick break and thank our sponsors.
Planet Duct. Planet Duct is the #1 choice for professional air duct cleaning in Colorado Springs and Southern Colorado. With state-of-the-art equipment and top-tier service, they make sure the air in your home or business is clean and allergen-free. Breathe easier with Planet Duct. Learn more at planetduct.com.
Awesome Home Services. Awesome Home Services delivers top-notch HVAC solutions for your home. Whether you need heating, cooling, or system maintenance, they ensure your comfort year-round. Visit awesomeservice.com for your HVAC needs. That's awesomeservice.com.
Mike Schoening Legal Shield.
So you're out here living your best life and suddenly legal drama slides in your DMs. Major L, right?
Bruh, hard pass. That's why you need Legal Shield. They're like the GOAT of legal protection.
Business contracts covered. Traffic tickets, no sweat. 3 a.m. legal emergency, they're up like, say less.
Hit up the link and get Legal Shield now.
Protect your energy, secure the bag, and stay drama-free, period.
Visit mscheoeng.legalshieldassociate.com. Proud American Electrical and Solar.
Give Proud American Electrical and Solar a call today for all your electrical and solar needs. They are locally owned and operated business right here in Colorado Springs. If you're looking for information on solar, this is the company you will want to call. Check out their website at proudamericansolar.com. Use promo code COSBusiness for a 5% discount today.
Franchise Succeed. Looking to invest in a franchise or grow your current one? The experts at Franchise Succeed help you navigate the world of franchising with proven strategies and guidance. Whether you're a first-time owner or scaling a franchise empire, they're here to help. Visit franchisesucceed.com to get started. That's franchisesucceed.com.
Pinnacle Advanced Primary Care. Pinnacle Advanced Primary Care offers affordable, accessible healthcare with a focus on you. They provide exceptional primary care without the hassle of insurance barriers. Experience a patient-centered approach. Learn more at pinnacleapc.com. Celebrity DJ.
Make your next event unforgettable with Celebrity DJ. From weddings to corporate events, they deliver energy and entertainment that keeps the party going. Visit celebrity-dj.com to book your DJ today.
Storybook Destinations. Turn your dream vacation into a reality with Storybook Destinations. They specialize in creating custom travel experiences from Disney vacations to bucket list adventures. Start planning today at StorybookDestinations.com. That's StorybookDestinations.com.
And now let's get back to the show.
Have you learned specifically like when you're creating your operating agreement as a new company to like, it's really good to have great partners, obviously, to have roles delegated out, but it's also good to know like whatever happens in life, because life happens and people change. Mm-hmm. Like everybody should have their options for like, hey, if I'm out, this is my pathway to getting out. Me included, him included, whatever it might be. It just protects everybody and just makes everything super clean. So you don't have to go through the motions of like, well, I want this. And it's like, it's already been discussed, you know?
Yeah, I totally agree.
We're all agreed to this. It's like, did you guys go through that as well through this business or?
Yeah. So in this current business, we did go through that. That was like one of the first things we talked about is what does this look like? What are your goals? Where do you see yourself in 5 years? What do you want? What's the end all be all? And then what would an exit look like? And then also if things went wrong and they went south, what would that look like for us as well? And so all the conversations we never had when we were younger starting the other businesses.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so yeah. Sometimes you just got to pay that ignorance tax, right?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, I paid a lot of that. That's for sure.
Yeah, I feel you. Well, then, as we were talking about before the show started, is like you're in LA area and then you move back coincidentally around a certain, world pandemic, correct?
Right. Yeah, literally moved back a couple weeks before the pandemic breaks out. Super thankful to be back in the city with all my family and friends during that time. And that's when kind of at that time, I'd moved back and I was working at T-Mobile. I was just in sales and I was like, I'm trying to figure out my life again. It was another restart. And I got into wholesale real estate for a little bit. And then I had a buddy out here who had started a paint company and he was doing really well. And I remember talking to him, picking his brain, and I'm like, man, like if this guy can do that, I feel like so can I as well. And so obviously I was like, I don't want to copy him. I'll get in the landscaping industry. And so I started at first just mowing lawns, trying to learn the industry. I'd always been decently handy and just, working with my dad and uncles. So I had a general idea for it, but I by no means was no expert. And so I was like, let me just start mowing some lawns and I'll figure it out. One thing led to another. And within the first year, we had picked up an install project, which is not part of the maintenance programs where you're mowing. It's like we're installing rock and mulch, and that kind of whole journey exploded and took off from there.
Gosh, that's awesome.
Yeah.
So talk about like at scale, like, so like, with the business, with anything with the business.
Edgar,
I think my
these
cameras. Off. This is like the second week in a while that this has popped off on me. But I want to serve that question again because the camera was right on me from it turned off. I saw it in my peripherals.
That's all good.
Yeah, we gotta learn to even though we don't want to stop the momentum, we have to.
No, it's all good, dude. It is all good.
Matt was really good at that last week because he's a YouTuber. He was really good at like, if we got to stop, we got to stop. Blah, blah,
exactly.
Cut it off. And he was really good at like jumping back into where he was because he does that a lot, like professionally.
I was gonna say a professional. No, it's all good.
I'll serve it back up again.
Alrighty. Do you know? Hold on. Do you know why that shut off? Was it the battery or memory or just? Okay. Yeah. So just happens.
Fair enough.
Okay, yeah. But it's not going to happen again? Okay, no worries.
It's all good. It's all
New
good
issue.
if it does.
Yeah.
All right, you ready?
Yes, sir.
Yeah, so it's been so now you're getting the business to a certain point, and now you're now experiencing success and scaling, and so that in itself has new types of skill sets that you have to kind of grow into, right?
Definitely.
Growing pains, like, and all of us as entrepreneurs somehow have to like slightly kill off the older version of ourselves to
Right.
become the new version of ourselves to understand these skills and take on these skills and be that. So talk about that process,
Yeah.
because like that's so big. A lot of us get to our ceiling and we don't know what else to do besides, just be stagnant for a while. So
Right.
how did you transcend those previous ceilings for yourself?
Yeah. Well, I think one thing that really helped me is even to back up. So during the clothing line days at the end when I was in Los Angeles, it was pretty evident that it was coming to an end and this thing isn't going to be as big as we had once hoped. So during that time, those last couple of years in Los Angeles, instead of putting a lot of focus and energy into the clothing line, I really focused on business, just overall entrepreneurial growth, mindset, just all these things in general. And so I went hard on studying what is it truly to be an entrepreneur? How do you truly scale a company? And so all of that information really then led when I moved back to the Springs, started the landscape industry and started growing in there. I was able to then pull back on the last couple of years. I mean, I literally spent a couple of years as if I was in a university. I always say I have a master's degree in YouTube University.
Yeah.
Or from YouTube University.
Yeah.
But those last couple of years of spending literally every free hour I had watching videos really played a huge part in helping me scale and grow this company.
Yeah. And for a lot of our viewers out there, like, what are we talking about as far as, I mean, and all of us have, like, if we're into entrepreneurship, we have our folks, right?
Right.
Our Gary V's.
Yeah, exactly.
Talk to us a little
Yeah.
bit about some of those folks who are some of those mentors that you had through YouTube University.
Yeah, of course. So obviously, like you said, Gary V, Tom Bilyeu was a big one for me with Impact Theory. Eric Thomas, I always have loved Eric Thomas.
Oh,
He
yeah.
was one of the first ones, like, I don't know if you remember his first
Oh,
the
yeah.
Guru video 12, 13 years ago. That was one of the first videos I'd ever watched
Mhm.
that had also helped kind of transform my life. And I was like, yeah, I like this. What is this guy talking about? So Gary V, Tom Bilyeu, Eric Thomas,
Mhm.
and then even locally, there's a guy here, Tom Reber. He's kind of like the mini Gary V in the contracting world. And he's here local in Colorado Springs. So when I found his channel, I studied him really hard. And he had once owned a painting company and grew it really big. And now he owns a company where he coaches contractors. And so that like really, really helped me a lot. I dove deep into his content.
That's interesting.
Yeah.
You said he's local here in town?
He's here in town in Colorado Springs. I think he has like, probably, I want to say, I could be way off, but I think it's like 40,000 subscribers or 100,000, but he's pretty big. He's literally like the Gary V of contracting, which obviously is no Gary V, but it's huge in the contracting world.
What is his name again?
Tom Reber.
Tom Reber. Okay.
Yeah.
Very cool.
Yeah. It's Rebar.
Yeah. It's so interesting because like I feel like a lot of folks out there, like they think that they need like a physical mentor, which is great, right?
Right.
Like everybody needs that like 9 o'clock phone call, like we can panic. And
Yeah, exactly.
whether it's a parent or someone in your industry, but like for you, you found these, what do they call them, parasocial relationships with other people. These people you don't know, but you feel like you know them because you've watched them for so long.
Right.
And
Yeah,
you
exactly.
love them for, their personalities, their
Yeah.
quirks, like a Gary V, right? He's very
Yeah.
quirky. He has his own personality.
Yeah.
Me and Andrew, once upon a time, I used to not like him as much. And me and Andrew used to talk back and forth about
That's
that
awesome.
with Gary V, but I've come to love him a lot
Mhm.
more.
Nice.
It makes it feel like they're your uncle or something.
Yeah,
you know?
exactly. Yeah.
In a weird way.
Literally, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I'm like, why aren't they hitting me up on Thanksgiving?
Yeah, exactly.
And then I'm like, oh yeah, they don't even know I exist.
And does he know, now that he's local, does he know about you and your business?
Yeah. So Tom, me and him have talked a little bit. We've DM'd. We're not like best friends or anything, but he knows of me. I know of him, and we've talked a little bit. Yeah.
Mhm.
And so I've talked to him as well about like joining his coaching program. First time I'd ever seen him, I actually ran into him at a gas station, and I was like, I follow your content, man. And then we got to talking.
That's
and
cool.
you start to realize, like in the contracting world, whether you're like a painter or electrician, there's this like upper echelon of people. And
Yeah.
part of the crew that he's part of and is part of his program are out in North Carolina. I had signed up with them. They helped build our website and so on. And so when we met in person at the gas station, I started talking to him about like, hey, I know this guy and this guy. And he's like, what? And that's how we hit it off.
That's
So, yeah.
awesome. Well, I don't know if you've followed too much of our content, but we had a certain Brandon Newfer on our show. Have you heard of Awesome Home Services yet? Have you seen him around town yet?
Services. They sound familiar. I don't know if I don't think I know them well, but it sounds familiar.
They're like 6 months old.
Just fix your mic real quick.
Oh, they're like 6 months old, and they're like at 50 plus employees. They built a $40
Wow.
million business in Florida, moved here. This is why they've moved so
Mhm.
quickly.
Yeah,
because they
yeah.
built a $40 million company in Florida.
Okay, that makes
But
sense.
he's from here though, or at least lived here. I think.
Yeah,
he's from
I
here,
think
right?
he's from. He loves Colorado Springs.
Yeah.
Like
Okay.
this is his home for him.
Yeah,
Is
yeah.
what he
Mhm.
expressed to us. And
he left and then came back. He came back because he left.
Correct.
Nice.
Yeah.
Is he an older guy or is he around our age?
He's our age.
He's exactly. I think he's
Yeah.
exactly your age. Actually,
Nice.
he's a year younger than me.
Okay.
Or a year or two younger than me. He's like Andrew's age.
Okay.
Exactly.
Okay.
But he's been killing it, man. And
Yeah,
it's just
good
been
for
really
that
cool
guy.
because you're talking about upper echelon of people who like know the system, know how to scale, know how
Right.
to build culture, know how to keep their guys and the retention all around. Like
Right.
he lives and drinks that. Like
Yeah,
that's
exactly.
what he's all about. And you can tell like when you talk to him, he
Mhm.
has,
Yeah.
and he had like a background in
It
like
sounds
a,
like, right?
yeah, cold calling
Yeah.
and sales. So
Oh,
like
cool.
he's really good at the back and forth dance
Yeah.
that a conversation
Mhm.
takes. And it's just so cool because like honestly on our channel specifically to kind of go into a little nuts and bolts, like
Yeah.
you guys perform really well on our show. A lot of our viewers love hearing about
Mhm.
these more trades types of businesses.
Yeah.
And you know, there's probably a lot of reasons behind that, but I just think that it's gaining a lot of traction. I feel like there's a lot
Yeah.
of growth in your industry just because like industries like mine or even Andrew's, like we're on our computer a lot. Well,
Yeah.
AI and our world are kind of colliding a lot already.
Right.
And yours, maybe there is some elements to that,
Yeah.
but there's something to be said about someone who just knows how to like use their hands and get
Right.
stuff done. Right.
Yeah, I agree.
Talk about that, like in
Yeah.
like you jumping into this industry and like, you know, having something that's not traditional, like a sexy type of career, but like
Right.
it's a very, very fruitful career. It's awesome.
Yeah, I totally agree. And I think honestly, that was one of the transitions mentally for me, especially as a younger kid, was you go from the fashion industry and it's glamour and how cool are you and all the really fake stuff, to be honest.
Mhm.
And then you switch to an industry that's really just like the meat and potatoes of like,
Yeah.
are you good or are you not good? And can you perform and can you not? And we don't really care how cool you are or your social media presence. Like it was such a switch for me and I really embraced it and really loved it. I was so sick of the like culture of fashion of just like, you have to be cool to really even have a true fashion brand,
Mhm.
especially when every celebrity has their own brand and you're just like competing with everybody and their mom. And so switching into this industry was such a cool shift for me to just really show like kind of the merit of like, you either have it or you don't. And that will prove yourself. So yeah, that was really cool to switch into.
That's awesome. You can tell there's a level of personal development with you and like how you communicate with people and how you look as an eye. Like there's a level of
Yeah.
confidence from you. Where do you pull that from? Do you pull that from your past experience running your clothing brand and being in probably a leadership role in that
Yeah.
aspect? Do you pull that from like learning from YouTube? Do you kind of all the above? Where does that come from with you?
Yeah, possibly probably all the above. I think maybe starting young with my parents, they've always instilled confidence into me. Always cheered me on. We're always my biggest fans. So I think that's probably where it started from. And then I think definitely with wrestling, I think getting to the highest level in wrestling really does build your confidence. It's unlike any other sport where
Yes.
like it's just you out there. And so if you do a good job, it's based on what you did behind the scenes. And if you didn't do a good job, it's based on what
You're
you
the
didn't
whole
do.
team.
Yeah, exactly. And so I think that's probably where that confidence comes from, because just getting on the mat, whether you can be a good wrestler or not be a good wrestler, just to have confidence to get out there and really put the entire light on yourself and everybody's just watching you, that builds character and confidence in itself. There's a famous quote in wrestling from Dan Gable, and it's, once you've wrestled in life, everything else is easy. And I'm kind of a big believer in that.
Yeah.
So I think that's probably where the majority of confidence comes from. And then having a really good supporting cast of family and friends that every time, and wife, that every time like something small happens, you got these people cheering you on and kind of building your confidence up a little bigger than it should be. And you're like, yeah, I actually am doing a good job. And then the next feed happens and you're like, yeah. And so that's probably where it comes from.
Yeah, for sure. And you just mentioned wife in there and you're
Yeah.
expecting your firstborn, right?
I am. Yeah. So we're expecting our first kid literally in a couple weeks. So probably sometime from anywhere from mid to end of March, at the absolute latest, early April, but it's looking like it's going to be a March baby.
Probably on my birthday, hopefully.
Yeah, exactly. When's your birthday?
March 26th.
It's probably going to be super close to that. Yeah.
It's a good day to have a birthday.
Yeah,
actually.
I
What sign is
agree.
that? Is that Aries? Aries?
Yeah,
I don't know
Aries,
what
yeah.
it is, honestly.
Yeah,
Look at me, I
it is
remember.
Aries. Yeah, it's good.
I'm trying to learn that sign
Yeah.
now. I was hoping
Oh,
for
yeah.
an April baby because the birthstone is a diamond, and I thought that was kind of cool.
Oh,
That's
is
cool.
it?
Yeah,
Cool.
but I'm in July, so I'm a Leo. So I'm like, I'm trying to now. I got to think about what the other signs are.
Yeah. Your first kid too, right?
Yeah, this is our first kid. It's gonna be a baby boy, and so we're really excited.
Dude.
Yeah,
Gonna be a wrestler, you think? Or
he's definitely gonna be a wrestler. Yeah, yeah.
I think that wrestlers have a completely different mental fortitude than any other athletes I've ever come across. I wrestled for a little while. I wish I did
Awesome.
more in high school. They like begged me, but I was playing football. For my size, I should have just done wrestling.
Yeah.
More specifically, because I would have been really good.
Yeah.
But the mental fortitude in wrestling is
Yeah.
unlike any other. And I was an athlete, so I know like what you guys go through
Right.
is it's insane. Like the
Yeah.
training is absolutely insane. You use like every muscle in your body.
Yeah.
You're going 100%
Yeah.
for minutes at a time. It's just
it's definitely pretty intense. And I think even one thing too is not only like getting to a high level, but like I think one thing that's really helped me with wrestling is the coachability. I had always had coaches and I always learned from a young age from my dad to having high-end coaches. Like going to the Olympic Training Center, I had Rulon Gardner when I was a kid was my coach. He had just won gold. There was another guy, Eric. He's part of Henry Cejudo's team now. He's in Henry Cejudo's quarter for every fight. He was my personal one-on-one coach. And so just being able to learn from these guys at a high level taught me that I always will like lean on coaching and I always would want a mentor. And I'm not the type of guy that's like, let me do it all by myself and get all the credit and kind of at the end of the road say like, hey, I did it on my own. I didn't need anybody. I've always honestly been kind of the opposite. I'm like, I want to be able to say, hey, yeah, this guy helped me get here quick because if I can speed this up 10 years and download all your knowledge, I don't want to go through the process of what you went through for 10 years if I can do it in 6 months with your coaching. And I think wrestling really taught me a lot about having a coach and having a mentor right away. It was like very apparent that this helps get you leaps and bounds ahead of people.
I completely agree. I think a leader is a servant leader, right? Is right. Supposed to have those qualities and supposed to lean on their team. And I don't know if you follow Cody Sanchez. You know who Cody Sanchez is? But she talks about, she says, let your dogs bark.
Yeah.
For you,
that's cool.
Which means like, don't try to like micromanage the people that you put in place to be leaders. Like let them do their thing. It's their baby at the end of the day. And I think that's so important. Like you're talking about like your employees, like at some point they'll probably be a lot better than you at their job and know more about it than you.
Yeah,
so
exactly.
It's important to lean on them for that.
Yeah, I totally agree. And I think even one thing too is I've always been kind of personable and like usually get along with most people. And I think like I thought right away I would be a really good leader off the bat with having employees. And then I think one thing I learned right away is I wasn't as good as I thought I would be just from the aspect of not necessarily that I would say I'm a perfectionist, but I like things done at a high level. Again, going back to the wrestling and having employees right away kind of taught me like, that's not how it's going to be. And the famous, if you can find somebody that can do it 80% of what you can do it, you're good. And that took me a minute to adjust to as we first started having employees. And so it really made me focus on leadership and then diving deeper into like Simon Sinek and all those type of books and really helping me in that aspect. But it was kind of shocking because I thought I would excel at it right away and I wasn't as good as I thought I'd be.
Yeah, that's important when you're a high performer, right? It's hard to find there's a lot of sayings of like high performers want to be only around high performers.
Yeah.
Because it just kind of annoys them that someone's not doing something or even if it's an effort thing, right? Even if it's not a talent thing, it's like an effort thing. Like that drives me nuts if it's like you're not putting an effort in because that's 100% in that person's court all the time is to put an effort. So that's so important. What about, and we talked a little bit about this, but what about the wife? Like you've been with your wife for quite some time now, right?
Yeah. So we've been together. We met in high school at Coronado. Pretty much started dating right outside of high school. She's a year younger than me and pretty much been together that whole time. Like we've had some breaks, as everybody knows, like when you're younger, some stupid breaks when you're teenagers. But outside of that, pretty much been together the whole time. So going on, I'm going to age myself now. What are we going on? 14, 15 years now. And got engaged and then got married and then now having our first baby boy together. So it's really exciting. And I think one thing people don't talk about is from a relationship standpoint is being able to see that person as a kid and being able to grow up with them has been one of the coolest things I think I've ever experienced is we've truly have become best friends. And it's been really cool to know that person as a teenager and now to know them as an adult and soon to know them as a mother. Like that's going to be really cool.
That's a great point. Yeah. People change, right? And and like, it's cool when you can be so comfortable and like your partner becomes your best friend.
Right.
And you see the growth with them and them being the best version of themselves. If they're so, if they're trying to achieve that better version of themselves year over year over year, once you get to 10, 15 years, like yourself, with your lady, like that's a beautiful thing just to capture. Just wait until motherhood comes.
Yeah, exactly.
That's awesome, man. I can see you glowing about it. That's pretty cool.
No, totally cool. And honestly, like what's funny about that is the catch-22 is who we were at 17 and 18 is not who we were at 23 and 24. And so that caused some struggles too. Cause it's like, well, we're not the same people we were when we were these kids that fell in love. And so navigating through that as well was definitely a big struggle. And then as we kind of became these young adults and then actually adults, learning who we truly were took a minute. But once I just kind of think of it as like this like glass ceiling, but once we finally broke through that and really learned who we were as adults, that changed everything. And it's been the best relationship for 10 plus years now. So it's been really cool, but there definitely is the other side of that too, of when you were kids, you're different than who you are as adults.
Plus, you garner a lot more experiences. Andrew's from Kansas City. Now, you said you lived in Seattle. My brother lived in Seattle, so I used to go there. That's a completely different world in Colorado Springs. It's beautiful, but it's like the landscape's completely different.
Totally different.
LA is completely different too.
Yeah.
How have those perspectives and places that you live, like more worldly experiences, helped you not only be a better business owner, but be a better partner to your wife as well?
Yeah. Honestly, just being able to travel and live in different cities has changed a lot. So like when we were all growing up here in the Springs, like it wasn't as big of a city as it is now. Yeah. And so like the big difference is when moving to Denver and Seattle and Los Angeles, seeing the level of competition outside of a sports world, like kind of what you want to call like a game of life, seeing that level of competition really blew my mind. And that also made me start taking life a little more serious. And then in that aspect, wanting to be a better person. And then that evolved into like, okay, then if I'm a better person, how do I become a better boyfriend and or husband? And so like, that's really kind of the biggest like thing I noticed was traveling around was how competitive the life, I guess, really ultimately is. So
yeah, it's interesting when you start seeing people in different leagues, if you will, right?
Yeah.
And then you come back home and you're like, man, like there's a lot I can do here. This is kind of, in a lot of ways, like Colorado Springs is a blue ocean because it's kind of coming to be.
Yeah.
And there's a lot of things that it still needs in order to become a bigger city like the Denvers or whatever it might be, right?
No, I totally agree. I think one thing that's a good point is like when I lived in Denver and Seattle and Los Angeles was seeing, in essence, kind of how far, I mean, they're big cities. So just seeing how more advanced they are from any aspect of the city being put together and seeing how much more evolved those businesses are. Moving back, you can see the growth of where this city's headed. But because I've already lived in like Los Angeles, you can see what's coming down the pipeline. And so being more prepared in that aspect, seeing the businesses that just have a certain level of customer service and just that they are trying to excel in their level of Los Angeles of being number one is so different than just a smaller city and a smaller market. So coming back home, that's been really cool to see what's coming down the pipeline and kind of what I would need to be prepared for.
We're going to take a quick break to thank our sponsors. Reveal Med Spa. Look and feel your best at Reveal Med Spas. With personalized plans that deliver real results, radiant skin, restored confidence, and natural rejuvenation.
At Reveal Med Spa, we see you. More than just aesthetic and wellness treatments, we provide a safe, judgment-free space where you feel valued, heard, and supported.
Visit revealmedspas.com.
I think it is literally just that too. We'll just double check. Book your next session at revealmedspas.com. That's revealmedspas.com.
Home Day. Buying a home shouldn't be overwhelming. Home Day empowers you to save on your mortgage by putting you in control of the process. Lower your cost and take the next step towards home ownership with ease. Visit gethomeday.com today.
Fast Signs. From banners to vehicle wraps, Fast Signs delivers custom visual solutions to help your business stand out. Their team ensures your message is clear, bold, and effective. Get your signage needed handled at fastsigns.com. That's fastsigns.com. Epic Eyewear. Stylish, affordable, and designed for adventure, Epic Eyewear has the sunglass and eyewear you need to see life more clearly. From the mountains to the beach, protect your eyes with high-quality frames and lenses. Check out their collection at epiceyewear.com. And by the way, Andrew, we do have a special discount, COSBP15, for 15% off, I believe.
Cars Helping Charities. Turn your unused cars into a meaningful contribution with Cars Helping Charities. They make it easy to donate your vehicle to support local causes. One of the local charities that we like to support on behalf of Cars Helping Charities, actually, and part of their sponsorship is Mattersville. And check them out too.
They're awesome. They are a tiny house community for veterans suffering with PTSD. They have a property out in Yoder, Colorado, and then they also have one in Sedalia, Colorado as well.
Donate today and make a difference. Visit carshelpingcharities.org. That's carshelpingcharities.org.
Dream Accounting Solutions.
Take the stress out of managing your books with Dream Accounting Solutions. They provide reliable expert accounting services tailored to small businesses. Simplify your finances at dreamaccountingsolutions.com. That's dreamaccountingsolutions.com.
Exponential Impact. Exponential Impact is driving innovation and entrepreneurial success in Colorado Springs. Supporting startups with mentorship, funding, and community resources, they help businesses grow and thrive. Learn more about their impact at exponentialimpact.com. That's exponentialimpact.com.
And now let's get back to the show.
We did a peek into your episode with Madeline Costa, which is a good friend of ours for sure.
That's awesome.
And you guys got to talk about scaling and standard operating procedures. Let's talk about that because I think it's so important for entrepreneurs because it's like the one thing as an entrepreneur, it's the hardest thing to do is like stop and think about the process when your hair is on fire and you're trying to pay bills and you have a wife, or you're just trying to support yourself and like you're behind on things, like the last thing you want to do is like, okay, let's just go, outside the forest, 50,000 foot view, and look at the process and from beginning to end, what's step by step. And you're like, it already takes me 10 hours to do this step. I can imagine outlining it. It's going to take longer. So
and then it changes.
And then it changes and evolves. So to like talk about that and like how important it is to do it up front and like how much more it helps you again at scale.
Yeah. And so I think one thing is, again, going back to like the wrestling and having coaches, is right away I wanted to find people in the industry, and I didn't really care if it was landscaping, just the contractor industry. Like, how did you get to this point, and what can I pick your brain? What questions can I ask you? And if I can't, just let me study you. I've been always really good at observing people and really just studying people. And so right away, one of the biggest things I noticed was you got to get out of doing the work. Obviously, that's the number one thing, but a lot of people fail at doing that. And so right away, I knew once I learned this industry in and out. So what I did is in the very beginning, I started messaging a lot of local companies in town, and I was just offering my labor for free. I said, look, let me come work for you on your job site. I'm just trying to learn how to landscape so I can do this perfectly. Obviously, there was a lot of no's, but once you go through at least 50 plus companies, somebody's going to give you a yes. So one of the companies finally said yes, went on their job site, started doing work completely for free, me and my cousin. So I own the company with my cousin. His name's Jacob Macias. He's local out here as well. And so we both went on the job site, started doing work for free. And that's kind of how we learned the ins and outs of like the install side. And then as soon as we would get off, so we'd go to our normal job, go to this job for free, come home, and then YouTube University and just get to studying as well of what we just applied. And then from that point, once I figured out like, okay, now I know how to bid the jobs. I know about how long each job should take hour wise. Immediately I was like, I have to get out of doing the labor of this. And that's when right away we started hiring. Like I did not want to get stuck in the, okay, now let me go scale the company. Let me go do the labor, because I knew back to that kind of perfectionist high level, I don't think I would have been able to remove myself. And I think that's what a lot of people struggle with, is the whole, nobody can do it as good as me. And even if it's 80%, you still feel like that's not what it should be. So I knew right away I had to remove myself by studying other people. And that's what I did.
Dang, dude, that's super impressive. And you said, was your cousin on the same page as you too? Like, was there any resistance there or anything like that? Because that's a big deal. Like to know that right out of the gate. Like, no, we need to like essentially fire ourselves out of doing the work and like be in a level of wherever you're doing sales or you're doing the admin, whatever it might be, but you're not doing the active fulfillment.
Right. Yeah. So Jacob's been on board with me the whole time. He's honestly the best business partner I could ask for, and so he's pretty chill. He's like, I think I'm a pretty chill guy, and he's pretty chill. So he's like, yeah, let's just go with the flow. Whatever you think, let's do it. And so, and especially I think it helped that I did have the 8+ years. Now, again, they were learning what not to do, but for him, he was totally new in this entrepreneurial world. Like this was his first business, first everything in the business world. And so I think he really allowed me in the very beginning to just say like, yeah, you kind of take the lead on this and let me know what you think. And then now he's a beast now in the entrepreneur world. But in the beginning, he was nice enough, because it takes a different business partner to do that. I had the experience where there was too many chiefs in the kitchen. Like there was too many alpha males that all had to have it their way. And I got to give him credit for in the very beginning, just allowing me to say like, yeah, you've had more experience than me. That's your idea. Let's go with it. And then now he's turned into a beast.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
And so, and this is is this year 5 for you?
This is we're on year 4 right now.
Yeah.
At the middle of this year will be year 5. So 4.5.
Oh, that's awesome.
Yeah.
Okay. Talk about the phases of those, because obviously like you're doing different things in the phase 1 is year 1. I know obviously you wanted to scale out and you did it, sounds like pretty quickly, but what are the learning lessons, throughout the years until, you're going into year 5 now, that you're learning, and milestones that you want to hit as a business owner, as a leader, in the scope and the scope of your business.
Right.
Didn't your note say 8 years in the making?
No, 8+ years in entrepreneurship.
Okay, gotcha.
So 8 years of failing in those first couple different clothing lines and different industries. And then this one finally took off, and this one's going to be year 5.
Awesome. Sweet.
So a total of, going on like 13 years, because it was around 2012 is when I first started.
Yes, success doesn't happen overnight. That's for sure.
Yeah, exactly. And that's been honestly funny, is like newer people that have come into my life are kind of like, they'll ask me questions about the landscaping business and like, oh, where are you at? And we'll tell them some numbers, and they're like, you guys are crushing it. How did that happen? And I'm like, well, there was so many years of failing and learning what not to do. The whole like iceberg under the water type of thing.
For sure, man.
But what was your question? Sorry.
Yeah, take us through the journey of that.
Yeah. So, you don't have to go year by year, but just take take us through the journey of like the different phases you've gone through, because a lot of people who listen to our show, they might be on, 6 months in,
Right.
and they just want to know, like how these phases progress. Everybody's different, but naturally they're kind of the same.
Right. Yeah. So in the very beginning, we started mowing lawns. I did a couple lawns in the beginning. And then again, I was like, I got to get out of this. So we hired an employee. He started mowing lawns. The numbers were so small though. It's $30-$40 a lawn. And I'm like, I can't figure out how to scale this. It was so small.
Mm-hmm.
And I also wanted to pay a livable wage. And I'm like, I'm not making it. I'm almost like kind of losing money on this.
Yeah.
And so we had one client that we were mowing her yard, and she had asked us like, hey, can you redo this gravel driveway? And I was like, yes. I knew it wasn't anything sophisticated from some of the jobs I'd been on when I was doing free labor. And I was like, yeah, we've done this before. Like I can figure this out. Now that's not to say like, I'm not going to say I was arrogant, because I know some of the videos I've watched from whether they're big podcasts or small podcasts, it's always this like, man, this guy was so like confident. And like, I just don't know if I'll ever be like that. I was scared. I was nervous when we first took on this job. Looking back, it's funny now because it's so small, but like I was nervous and freaking out. And so we agreed to do her gravel driveway. At the time, it was the biggest job we'd ever done. I think it was like maybe $1,500, but I was freaking out because it was going to be a 1-day job. And I was like, I'm going to make $1,500 in 1 day. Now, granted, it's not all profit, but you're like, this is insane.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And so we had completed that job. And from that moment on, I was like, this is it. I'm going all in on landscape installs, and just dove headfirst into it. Every job was kind of small, around like the couple thousand range. Small at that time, but at that time it felt, or I'm sorry, small now, but at that time felt like this is the craziest thing in the world. They're so big. And then we got into doing new construction. That's all the new homes that are being built. And we landed our first job. Now with that, at the time, again, we're still learning and learning what to do. It comes with full design scales, HOA approvals. And I'm like, oh my God, okay, how do we do this? And I just always wanted to dive in and say yes to everything, and I'll figure it out on the back end.
Right.
I knew it could be nothing scary. I'm not a doctor. I'm not doing surgery. So it's nothing where I can like hurt somebody or kill somebody, but honestly just dove headfirst in, because I had so many years of failing that I was like, I'm not going to look back on this opportunity and like say that I did not give it all. And so I just dove headfirst into now design work. And then I drove down I looked up where these HOA buildings are, like their headquarters that are owned by then the company that owns the HOA, drove down to their offices and asked them like, how do I submit this? What paperwork do you need? How do I get the paperwork? How do I get your rules? Just went all out on that. And that then took us to another level of doing full scale designs, front yard, backyards, learning HOA approvals, learning the minimums on HOAs and all that stuff.
And they let you just go over there and ask them? Like
totally. They were
that's cool.
They were really cool. And so I look back on it now and I'm like, who was that guy? That guy's pretty ballsy.
Right, yeah.
But yeah, they were honestly really cool. And I think the one thing I've learned in life as I've gotten older is most people are willing to help. Like if you're just willing to ask and you got a good attitude with it, like most people are willing to help. And that's been really true in my life. And so, yeah, I just went to them and was like, what paperwork do I need? How do I do this? Honestly. And the other thing is I was really transparent. I was like, this is our first time. We really want to get into this industry. Like we really want to be a name in this city, in this community. This is where I'm from. How do I do this? And they were really willing to help. And from that point on, like we've done a ton of new construction, and now that's kind of our bread and butter.
That's awesome, man.
Yeah.
And it's so interesting learning like scale and pricing and margins. All those different things are so important. Like what you're making for the cost of this one job. You should know like, okay, I'm going to profit this much, pay this much to my employee, whatever percentage of margins. Like those are the things, like once you kind of get into the game of entrepreneurship, you need to understand your numbers at that level. Right. Because then you can really start understanding how you're going to scale everything. And if you can scale, some people think they could just endlessly scale. That's not true. If you don't have the manpower or whatever it might be, the manpower that you have might not be the right skilled manpower at scale for different types of projects or anything. It's so important. So, how was that process with you, like pricing? Because now you're like, man, like now I got a taste of some of the, the bigger scale jobs, a little bit better pricing. How did you learn how to scale? Was it all just kind of along the way? Like, okay, this is how I'm going to price this. This makes sense for this job or whatever.
Yeah. So it was a little bit of YouTube University, studying these entrepreneurs who were thankfully putting out some free information on like kind of roughly what your gross profits should be. And again, you got to take it with a grain of salt because they're in different industries, different states. And then the buddy that I had referenced earlier about when I'd moved back, he had started the paint company. He had kind of helped me. And again, he was super new. He was only maybe like a year or two in at most, but he knew more than I did. And that goes back to the coaching and mentorship. So I would pick his brain on like, what are your gross profit margins? Where did you get these from? He would kind of give me some rough numbers. And then again, I would just went out there and I was playing with them. And I was like, these first couple jobs, like, I know I can't lose money and I'm in this for the long haul. Like, I don't need to make money on this job. I still had a job on the side, like paying my bills. And so this was all like a learning experience that I was okay if I lost money on this job. Well, I wouldn't be okay, but I was okay if I broke even. And I knew that at a minimum I would break even. And so that's how I started pricing them. And at the end of every job, I would do a job costing and I would break down all my materials, break down all the labor. And I would say, how much did I make? Did I make what I said I would make or did I not? And then I would adjust from there. And as time went on, started perfecting the numbers.
That's awesome. Well, it sounds like you've been through like a lot of the hard slogging of entrepreneurship and like pulling those 100-hour weeks and stuff. Talk to us about the scape of what it is now. Is it still like that? Or are you at a place now where you're able to at least pull back and understand that like, hey, I can work the 100-hour weeks, but I don't necessarily have to anymore because my business itself has been able to run by itself in a lot of aspects.
Yeah. So definitely able to pull back. I don't work 100 hours anymore. I don't even work 40 hours anymore, but I find this balance in, this kind of goes back to what we were talking about before the show started with having a newborn, is I do not have to work nowhere near 40 hours anymore, but this like desire and hunger in me of wanting to do it. Like I catch myself sometimes sitting down with the day and I'll be done. Maybe like some days I'll be done around noon, but then it's just something about me. I don't know if it comes from like that wrestling competitiveness.
It's the competitor in you.
Yeah. Like I can't take a break, and I'm not the type of person that like has to be busy. I know there's people like that just can't sit still. They always want to do stuff on the weekend. I'm not that guy. Like I can chill out on the weekend. It's the competitiveness of business. And I think that goes back to when I was in the different cities, learning how competitive life, like I always say, like life is a game. And if you think about it that way, and then you think about the competitive side of that, that's where the moments where I'm like, I could relax, but what are these other entrepreneurs doing? And even other entrepreneurs in my industry or even in my city. And that's drives me. And so I probably average close to 30 or 40 weeks, but definitely would not need to because of the systems and processes that we've built out.
Yeah, and I definitely get that. I think it's also like internally, you might be just laying down the foundation because you're about to have your first newborn, and maybe you want to get things as best as you can before you bring a new life into this world where your baby boy is not asking for an entrepreneur father, but he's getting an entrepreneur father, and with that might come some sacrifices, or maybe not, but like that's kind of part of it too. And maybe you're doing the work, because it's hard to bring a baby in the world when you're younger and you're struggling financially and all those different things are coming into place. Like you're trying to lay the foundation, it sounds like.
No, totally. And I think honestly, like even patience, having the 8 years of failing, having years of wrestling before I achieved a high level, like I think I've always had a really good understanding of patience. And so I think probably subconsciously knowing that I'm putting in all this work now, so I don't work until I'm 65, or at least even if we're running the company in my 50s, like I pretty much am retired and or semi-retired and have like a CEO running the company. Back to the Cody Sanchez, this is how like you learn every day. She had talked about like the CEO is one of the most stressful positions, but the founder is one of the best positions. And I never thought about it from that perspective. I thought as high as you can go as a CEO. And then I'm like, wait, yeah, you could be the founder one day and hire a CEO for a couple $100,000 to run your company. And that really changed my perspective. So probably some level of it is subconsciously building it to one day I can retire when I'm 45 or something.
Yeah, that's pretty cool though.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so where are you at right now as far as employees are concerned? How many employees do you have?
So we have 9 W-2 employees. And then we have about anywhere from about 12 to 15 1099 employees.
Wow. Okay.
Yeah.
And that's like 10 to 15 1099 employees. Those are the folks. So like, are they kind of like when those other, you said 8 or 9, they're actually
9 W-2 employees.
9 W-2s. Like, are they like your main crew? And then like, if anything's exhausted, you bring in other people?
Exactly. Yeah. So like, that's our main crew. We keep them busy year round. And then our subs and or 1099s, we keep them busy usually 8 to 9 months out of the year. We're a little different than most companies though. Like I don't like talking about subs as much because they have such a bad stigma in the industry. And the way most people utilize them is, let's say I popped up Billy's Landscaping and then I just hired these subcontractors. They go through no training of what my standards are. They have no idea how I install things. Like you're really just middlemaning the client. And that is not like what we do. All of our subs go through like a general training. Now, there are certain laws where you can't treat them like W-2 employees. Otherwise, you got to pay them like that and so on and so forth. So it is a fine line, but our subs and 1099s are the closest to a W-2 that you can get without being a W-2, because we want them to have standards. We want them to know how we install things. We want to know a little bit like about them. Like we meet with them, have coffee with them. We don't, like, I know a lot of people in the industry, they barely even know their subs and they'll just send them out to jobs. Like it's so opposite for us. And so it's why I don't like talking about it as much unless I have the time to explain like how we really treat our subs and really partner with them to help grow their business as well as keeping the incline standard.
Absolutely. Well, let's dive even more into that, like the manifesto of incline, because I know you guys have a full spectrum of like SOPs and like learning material and resources available for people. Most people think, oh my gosh, landscaping, like again, throw me in and give me a shovel, or whatever it might be, and I'm working for you. It's not like that with you. You have these processes in place because you don't want everybody necessarily calling you and asking you questions about every little thing, correct?
Yeah, totally. And so when I was working at T-Mobile, like working the big corporate world, I kind of got to see what that side was like as well. And so at T-Mobile, they had this thing called T-Connect, and it was kind of like the Google of T-Mobile. Like anything you needed to know, you could look up specific to the company. And so we built out that same thing with Incline. And now this took years. This is by year 3 is when I started realizing, like, as we started having employees in the first couple of years and I was getting these calls, it went back to like, okay, I'm still working just as much. Like I'm not doing the physical labor, but I'm on the phone 24/7. And how do we solve this? And so we built out these systems and processes where specific to Incline, you can kind of Google within this app and look up anything you need to know. And if it's not there, we'll add it. And as the years have gone on, it's pretty much built out. Like I'll never say it's perfect because every day there's something to add, but for the most part, 95% of the general questions and concerns that you would have as an employee, you can look up in this, what we call like an Incline app, and find the answer to it. And you don't need to call your supervisor above you and so on and so forth. And so that's really allowed us to scale. And it even goes up into like the management that we have in Incline for our project coordinators and managers. You can look up on like, okay, I'm about to hire a new employee. You would type that in and what's the process to hire this employee and all the documents I need to print out so you can get prepped for that entire meeting and then go through each question you need to ask and so on and so forth. And then to take it a step further, once you do the interview, again, you would go and print out, there's a test that like the in the field crew members work.
I like that.
And so like they take a test, they have to pass it at 80% before you can get in the field. The landscaping and contracting world for the most part is very scary from a customer's perspective. You can just pop up a company one day and have there's no barrier to entry. And like, that's one thing that sets Incline apart is like all of our employees go through extensive training. They go through testing. You have to pass before you can even get out into the field. And then even in the field, we do monthly one-to-ones with all of our employees, and each employee has certain KPIs, which are key performance indicators. They have to go over those, or we go over those with each employee to make sure they're hitting them. Like this is a very kind of well-oiled machine for a small company. And that's what's really been setting us apart and helping us grow.
That's incredible. That's awesome. And I love the one-on-one aspect because that's super important. Any of the business I've had, I've always made sure I had room to have those one-on-ones, and so important because you'll find, like you're reviewing them and how they're doing, but they also get to touch base with you and give you feedback as a leader and connect with you as a human being, because we're all human beings at the end of the day, right? Like we're here to connect with one another. You're very personable. Probably makes sense for you to connect with your people like you are. Talk about that experience with your employees and like, I mean, there's so much that comes out of that, right? Like if they're having issues at home or, they're having a rough month and like, maybe that's why they're having, issues, whatever it might be, performing their job to the best of their ability.
Honestly, it's been a game changer for us. And so kind of one of the things I learned from Gary Vee is the empathy, and like coming from this competitive background, like kind of raised by, I was with all brothers, had no sisters. So like the classic manly kind of background is what I've had. Going into the business world, I thought that's kind of what you needed and kind of to be a dick. Yeah. But what I really found out was from the Gary Vee perspective, like the more empathy you have, it really changes a lot. And so during those one-to-ones, I thought in the beginning it was going to be very business savvy, like go over KPIs, and then we'd move on. And what it ended up turning into was KPIs as well, but then a lot of just like personal one-to-one on a human being level and getting to know that person and then what they are struggling at home or what is going good in their life. And you can start to see it reflect in their work and just honestly getting to know them personally and vice versa. I think that's one thing at Incline. One of the last questions we always ask is there anything we can do as supervisors and or owners? Just because we own the company, we are not above anybody. So like, feel free to tell us whatever is wrong or whatever you feel about us. Like you'll never be held in contempt because we're the owners. Like I don't like those vibes of certain corporations that I have worked at or jobs I've worked at. And so getting to know them on a personal level was such a game changer though. And and getting to know each employee like that during the one-to-ones was really cool. And it's not what I anticipated.
Yeah, that's really cool. Have you guys ever planned out anything like yearly, whatever it might be, like yearly holiday parties or like birthday events for Incline or anything like that, that they can kind of like get together, barbecue, get food or anything like that?
Yeah. So every year, each of our employees during their birthdays, like we'll show up to the job site, give them cakes and presents and all that. If you're a first year employee, don't watch this because we surprise each first year employee for their first birthday. Everybody that's been a part of the crew and knows what's happening is laughing, but we'll pull up to the job site, me and Jacob as the owners, and we're never really at the job site. So everybody's like, oh man, you must be in trouble. And they're feeding into it. Yeah. We'll pull them to the side and start to say things are going bad and they're freaking out. And then we're like, we're just kidding. And then we'll give them some presents and cake and everybody's laughing. And then yearly we do a big Christmas party. And so typically we'll go like bowling. I want it always to be something like fun, but also competitive, but nothing that's like super competitive where things can get too serious. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And so we'll go bowling. I usually whoop everybody up. So if you're watching, get better at bowling.
There's that competitor again. Popping up.
And so, we like get pizza parties and all that type of stuff as well. So
yeah, that's so important, man.
Yeah.
We have a buddy named Brian, and he does only corporate events, and he does it for like the Fortune 100, 500 companies,
awesome.
like big, and they spend so much money on their events. I mean, JP Morgan,
Arby's,
and they'll fly them in. None of them are based here, but they'll fly them into Colorado for a weekend and just
crazy.
Have fun and just dump money into, because they know how important it is.
Right.
Mm-hmm. And it's kind of funny because we've learned a lot. Like they don't allow pictures and things like that because people are letting their hair down and enjoying themselves with their bosses.
Yep.
And things happen, but that's between them. And I think that's kind of cool.
It's
I
agree.
Hey, listen, there's no one looking at you. We're just going to have fun, enjoy each other and connect on a human level again. It's just so cool to see that. It's so important to the culture to have those events, those get together. Cause you're right. Like even competition is fun if you know how to handle it right.
I agree.
That's how you were raised. Like it brings a certain aspect out. You kind of want some of you want your employees to have an edge of competitiveness to them.
No,
right?
I totally agree. Yeah. And on a random like side note, there's a show on Hulu. It's about the start, like how Uber got their start. I forget the name of it, but it's got the one of the main characters that Joseph Gordon-Levitt or whatever.
Yes.
I can't remember the name of the show, but it's basically how Uber got started.
Yeah.
And this is so random when you were saying that, but they have a Christmas party in the show, and I ended up looking it up. They spent like on the Christmas party, I think they spent like $13 million or something on that. Long story short, because I'm a nerd, I went and did all the math. I looked up Uber's revenue for that year and did the math, and it was like a 0.25% of their revenue. And then I was like, what did I spend on our Christmas party? And I went back and looked, and it was like 3% of revenue. And I'm like, that's like, what is that, 12 times the amount? And it's obviously nowhere near that, but just like a random side note that like these Fortune 100 companies, like when you get to certain levels, it's just like,
and it's
insane.
a write-off too.
Yeah, exactly. It's just so insane.
I forgot what he said too. I think it was like Red Hot Chili Pepper, like they were the band that performed.
Right.
Like it's just insane. And it was like the Gaylord up in Denver area.
Yeah.
It's just cool to see like.
What are you talking about? The movie?
No, like the corporate party, like they had like Red Hot Chili Peppers.
Oh, okay.
To switch gears back to the corporate events, they were like having like, not only are they having a cool performance, they're having Red Hot Chili Peppers.
Right. Yeah, that's pretty sick.
It's just
for Brian's events, they often have Wirewood Station.
That's
correct. Their local band.
That's awesome. Heck yeah. I think until we get to that level, I'll probably just give my employees actual Red Hot Chili Peppers.
Just kind of let them know that Red Hot Chili Peppers performing and give them.
Yeah, we'll put it on the background. We'll play it as they're eating them.
Well, Red Hot Chili Peppers were known for performing naked with socks on their cocks. So
that's awesome.
So maybe you guys did that or something.
There you go. Back from Andrew.
That's awesome. Yeah. That's awesome.
Always get one per episode.
There you go.
Well, that's awesome, man. I know like this is an interesting time in your life. Like we've harkened back to like your newborn, and I just think it's really cool to kind of document this process because like right now you've worked your whole life, competitor, business owner, and like the main dream has always been something that like you're attaining, for your family.
Right.
But mostly you in the beginning, right? And then now you have a wife, so your family. But talk about like the mindset now that you're bringing another life into your life.
Right.
Is there anxiousness? Is there level of like excitement? Talk about that because I think it's awesome. And every entrepreneur, especially like men,
right.
Well, I can only speak as a man. Like, I have my own thoughts about that too. Of
Right.
like, okay, this is what I want to do before I have my first kid. I want to be
Right.
here or whatever. So talk about that.
So that played a big part in it, honestly. Like I'm a very like numbers guy, very analytical. I've always been very good at my personal finances. And so there was certain levels that of financial that you want to get to. And so luckily I was fortunate enough to get to these levels with running incline, and that kind of opened up to like, let's go down this journey of having a baby. And so now that it's here, feeling a little bit anxious, that's for sure. I think the biggest thing I think is trying to balance running a company and being an entrepreneur while also being a dad. I think I'm going to thrive in being a dad. I'm a pretty high energy person. So, and especially with a boy, I think we'll be crazy as like little, when he's a toddler. So I think from the dad aspect, I think I'll crush it. But I think from trying to balance the business and being a dad, that's probably what I'm most nervous for. And I think this specific business and just any business I've had over the last 12 to 13 years has been my baby. And so it's like now trying to balance that with an actual baby and learning what that looks like, I guess, is going to be exciting, nerve-wracking, and we'll see how it plays out. So
it's good that you have gotten to the point though where you only have to work 30 to 40 hours a week by the time you get this.
Yeah, totally.
By the time you have the baby.
Yeah. By the time I get this thing.
Yeah. So you're prepared. I mean, that sounds like you have your work-life balance pretty well balanced.
Yeah, totally. I mean, that is a game changer. Like for the most part, I work at home and I'm just on like consultation calls with clients and checking up on certain parts of the company. So I think that will be a game changer for sure is being able to work from home and also have a kid as well. So, but yeah, we'll see how it goes. Trying to figure it out.
Do you have a name picked out?
We do. Yeah. So with our last family name being Sturgill, I wanted to play on the S's. So his name is going to be Saint Sturgill.
What? That's a strong name.
Yeah. All I could think about when me and my wife were talking is like his name on a wrestling bracket.
Oh, that's hilarious.
And thinking about like when the other kids are like, damn it, I got like when they see like Saint Sturgill, they're like, I got to wrestle Saint.
Yeah, that sounds
intimidating.
Yeah. So that's going to be his name.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
That's been, I mean, I'm sure that's like one of the biggest milestones. I mean, that's part of the ultimate human experience, right? Is having your first, have you guys decided how many kids you're going to have?
We've talked about it. Yeah. So she's okay with anywhere from 5 to 10. That's not happening. No, I think she honestly does want a bigger family. She probably would want like 3 or 4, but we've agreed upon 2. Like, I think we're going to have 2 kids. And yeah, I mean, I think I could be open to a third one. It just depends on, what I've heard is once you have 1, 2, and 3 isn't that crazy. We'll see if that's true. But, I think once you break the threshold of having 1, I definitely don't want him to be like a single kid.
Yeah.
So I think having a sibling would be awesome. And then from that point, if it's not as bad as I'm thinking it could be or something, and, still able to live life and run the company, maybe a third one's in the realm, but more than likely probably 2.
Yeah. That's awesome that you're getting to the next phase. That's super important. It's also fun to note that, my girlfriend, Danielle, you went to high school with Danielle. So in the hood high school, you talked about Lawson, right? She explains it like that as well. Yeah, she was just talking to me about you, in high school and stuff growing up and everything of that sort. I'm sure, like you were talking about before, like you've changed so much. Even she last got to hang out with you. And it's cool to see like the human experience, what people are up to, post high school and everything.
Yeah.
I know like you were going through an identity crisis a little bit once you lost your wrestling career.
Right.
When you were looking up into entrepreneurship, did it kind of connect back to old things in your life of like, okay, like maybe I always did want to be an entrepreneur. Maybe that was always kind of the end goal after wrestling. Because wrestling, I mean, that career has its, maximum, whatever it might be, 30, 40-year-old,
Right.
Did you always have that in you inherently to be an entrepreneur, or where did that come from?
I think yes and no. And it comes from being analytical and cautious, that there was a part of me that probably was like, this is too scary. And then a part of me at the times when I did it when I was young thought it was really fun. And so some examples was, I remember being a little kid and my parents had a garage sale, and my dad had like told us like, hey, while we're having this garage sale, let's set up a little stand with some lemonade and chips. And I remember selling those. And I just remember thinking like, that was so cool, that whatever amount of money we made, but I just thought it was so cool. Like being able to give something and then get money back for it. That kind of blew my mind. And then when I was in 6th grade, we did this little entrepreneur class, and you got to choose a business. And for whatever reason, I choose making smoothies. So I like, at the middle school, all the parents would show up, and there was probably like a couple hundred parents, and they went around to each booth, and whichever booth they thought was most appealing, they would buy from. And I had a little smoothie booth. making like strawberry banana smoothies. And then I had charged extra, like if you wanted whipped cream on top and stuff like that. And so again, I had one of the more successful booths and I had realized like, well, this is really cool, like exchanging these things for money, but it never like necessarily really took off to where like I just dove deep into that world until my buddy was like, hey, let's start this clothing line. And I was kind of at that point where I was like, I don't really know what I'm doing. And it had been a while since I had been in that entrepreneur world. But when I dove back in, it was a total game changer. And I was like, yeah, this is for me. And a little bit part of like, I had been working at that time, like as a young adult, I kind of hated being told what to do and schedule wise, I thought that didn't make sense, that I had to be there at this certain time or stuff that just didn't make sense to me. And that's kind of how I felt when I was going to school as well. Like, why am I taking, like a history class when I'm trying to be this career, So like,
right.
So like I get general history, but like this certain level of history that I have to know in order to do this career. So just certain things didn't make sense to me. And as I got older, when I jumped back into entrepreneurship, I was like, yeah, this is where it's at. I'm going to go all in on this.
That's awesome, man. Well, you're well spoken. It sounds like you're well driven. Obviously, from that competitive background, it's just so cool to see. What's one piece of advice you'd give yourself, starting back up 12, 13 years ago in entrepreneurship that now that you didn't know then?
That's a good question. Probably would say like the classic trust the process, because as much as like I dove back in and I'm going to do this until I figure it out, there's no there's no doubt about it that you have these moments where you question yourself. You've just gone so long with not making money or even at times losing money, like year after year after year. And you just, before you know it, just like, maybe this isn't cut out for me. Maybe I just go get a regular job and it's just my life. And there's nothing wrong with that, but there was just always something inside me that was like, keep going and trust the process. And so I would say like, be patient and trust the process that it is going to work out. I'm a big believer, and there's like a famous picture of this coal miner and he's digging and it's like a couple strokes away from where all the diamonds are. And I've just always thought about that picture. And like, I'm a big believer in that. Like you, as a human, you just can't do something for so long and not break through. And like, it could be 1 year and it could be 5 or 10 or 15 years, but like, no matter what, eventually something's got to give. And I'm just a big believer in that. But that's not to say that in those moments you don't struggle to keep going. And so I think that would be the advice, is like, always remember that picture of the coal miner that's one stroke away from the diamonds.
And that it's going to work out.
That it's going to work out. Exactly.
That's a great piece of advice. I think that's from Think and Grow Rich, right? 3 Feet from Gold.
3 Feet from Gold is a separate book with same writers though.
Yeah.
It might be in that book too.
Yeah, I think it's a sub book of
spinoff.
Think and Grow Rich. 3 Feet from Gold is a true story.
Yeah.
I got to meet the author actually.
That's right. Yeah, because they ended up picking up and moving. When they were like truly digging for gold back in the day.
Yeah, and they're 3 feet away, and then like the guy who came in and replaced him, like literally like a couple hacks, and boom, hits it.
Yeah, exactly.
And it's just a crazy true story of like, you just never know how close you really are to hitting that true.
I agree. And so like, I think if you have a passion for it, just keep going. And like, I just like, if you think about a lot of stories, again, going back to like studying people, like there's just not many people that kept going and it didn't work out for it. And again, that goes back to the patience. So like, are you willing to wait 5, 10, 15 years? But eventually like, it's going to work out. It just is like inevitable.
As long as you're putting in the work though.
Agree. Yeah, I agree. Yeah, you just can't be like wishing and hoping for 10, 15 years. Yeah, exactly. But yeah, if you're putting in the work and you're being consistent and have discipline, like it just feels inevitable that it's not going to work out. And there's a lot of stories from around the world over and over and over that prove that. And so it's not just like an ideology that's like based with nothing.
That's awesome, man. That's a great piece of advice for sure.
Yeah.
Well, this is your camera right here. Where can we find you?
Yeah. So Incline Landscaping, the best way to find us is inclinelandscaping.com. On social media, it's just Incline Landscaping, all one word. Yeah.
Well, all right, man. This has been a wonderful episode.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I guess we're ready to wrap this up. Do you want to take it out?
Yeah, absolutely. Just thank you so much for coming on.
Yeah, of course.
Feel like we're quick friends right before the show started with me, you and Andrew. You're just a good, cool guy.
Yeah.
We hope the best for you. It sounds like you have a lot of things going for you. We're going to root for you, man. Whatever you need, just let us know.
Awesome.
This has been an awesome conversation.
Yeah.
We're rooting for you, brother, for sure. I mean, you're a wrestler, so you're going to make it win. You're going to win, man, for sure. You're a hell of a competitor.
Not just a wrestler, state champion. Right?
Yeah,
man. Yeah. That's awesome.
That's not an easy feat.
That's incredible. So we're rooting for you, brother. And this has been an awesome episode. So this has been the COS Business Podcast, and we'll see you guys on the next one.